Hello, everyone, and welcome to my podcast. In another podcast, I read the entire Gospel of Thomas, the 114 sayings of Jesus, recorded by Thomas and found in 1945 in Egypt in the Nag Hammadi scriptures. Today, I'm going to pick out certain verses and comment on them, hoping to clarify and deepen the meaning and the understanding of what Jesus is saying here. These are the hidden sayings that the living Jesus spoke and Judas Thomas the twin recorded. He said, "Whoever discovers the interpretation of these words will not taste death." A powerful teaching and promise. And there's many spiritual teachers, even those in India and the East, that say this Gospel of Thomas is all you need for liberation, for salvation of your soul. And Jesus is saying that right here. He's saying if you can understand truly the meanings intended in these sayings, if you can assimilate them into your heart, you will not taste death. Not meaning your physical body will stay here forever, but that upon that leaving of the physical body, you will become immortal. You will taste immortality. He said, "Let one who seeks not stop seeking until one finds." This is verse 2. "When one finds, one will be troubled. When one is troubled, one will marvel and will reign over all." So we have to have this overarching desire in our hearts to find God within. And on the way to that, we will be troubled by seeing the great suffering in the universe and in ourselves, in the darkness within us, and in everything else. In the macro, the outer, and the micro, the inner are one. So we will be greatly troubled on this journey that takes great courage and persistence. But he's saying, do not stop seeking until you find. When one is troubled, then one will marvel. Then one will come into the beauty of the mysteries of existence, of infinity, of God, and will reign over all. Coming back to your true nature will reign over all rather than be a slave of karma, rather than be in the prison of the body, rather than being stuck in the divisive mind, rather than being caught in illusion. We will marvel and reign over the all. But we must have that strong heart to seek and the strength and courage to go through the pain, to go through the struggle. And so the spiritual path is by no means for the faint of heart, and only the most courageous of beings undertake this journey and succeed. In verse 3, Jesus says, "If your leaders say to you, 'Look, the kingdom's in heaven,' the birds of heaven would precede you. If they say to you, 'It's in the sea,' the fish know it already. Rather, the kingdom is inside you and outside of you." How is it both? It's both because there are heavens, there are heavenly realms, there are many, many levels of reality and planes of consciousness above this material world that we seem to live in. But they correspond with your inner states. So more important than the outer state or the seeming outer state is the inner state. And that's why he's saying the kingdom of heaven is within you. It's in your heart right now, in this moment. The spark of consciousness that is why you even exist is with you. So you find the deepest essence within. But it is also without, because that's another level of this game, of this world play. But the only way to get to any realm that is more pure than this, that is filled with more light, more truth, more purity, the only way you can even handle that light is if you're pure enough inside, if you're free from your karmas, from your bondages, from your suffering, from your desires, from your craving. So we have to seek the kingdom of heaven within and continuously do this work. And then we will see it's without as well. It's both the micro and the macro. He said, when you know yourselves, verse 4, then you'll be known and you'll understand you're children of the living Father. But if you don't know yourselves, you dwell in vanity, and you are vanity. So if we do not know ourselves, the way we're living is vain and useless. Jesus says later in here, it's like a corpse. We're feeding into that which is of no value. Not only are we living in the vanity, but we are vanity. But if we know ourselves, we know we're children of the living Father, that we are one with God, that we are these grand beings of the stars, that we are incredible without explanation possible, that what we are is beyond what even can be said, heard, or thought about. But we have to step out of this vanity, of this game of vanity that we live in. And that's why in verse 4, Jesus says, the person old in days will not hesitate to ask a little child 7 days old about the place of life, and that person will live. For many of the first will be last and will become a single one. So again, the old person can ask the child because it's not about intellectual knowledge. It's not about the age of the body. It's about innocence, and it's about purity, and it's coming back into the one. Coming into the one and still being able to be in our separateness, but in a different way. And that's why Jesus says you have to be born again to enter the kingdom of heaven, which he just said is within. You have to be willing to give up what you think you are, what you think you know, all of that. Your models that you so preciously care for that are binding and bonding you to samsara, to the wheel of suffering. We have to be able to surrender those and become childlike, humble, and open again. Verse 5, Jesus said, know what is in front of your face, and what's hidden will be disclosed to you. Nothing is hidden that will not be revealed. So first, we start with right now. He says, know what's in front of your face, meaning come right here in this moment, work with what you have, with where you're at, and then everything will slowly be revealed. The first step is right where you are. And he says there's nothing hidden that will not be revealed. And he says in many parts of the Gospels and in here, what's done in secret will come into the light. Our inners and our outers. He says, God who made the outer, do you think not also made the inner? So there's nothing we can hide from God. So we have to be totally comfortable, even with our defects, even with our habits we want to hide from people. All of it is laid naked before God. Everything, he says, that's done in the darkness will come to light. So there's no room for pretenses, no room for pretending to others. We have to be a true statement of where we are in each and every moment. Verse 6, his disciples questioned him, must we fast? How should we pray? How should we give alms? What must be observed with regard to food? Jesus said, stop the lie. That which you don't like, don't do it. You're naked before heaven. That which you hide, that which is veiled, all will be uncovered. So he's teaching them the deeper truths, teaching us. He's saying it has to be in your heart. Not that we don't pray or we don't fast, but any outer observances are futile if they're not corresponding with the inner truth. And that's why he says all is disclosed before heaven. So if you say, oh, I'm going to say these prayers because that's what me and my family do in the church, and this, he's saying that's useless. You might as well not even do it because your heart is disclosed before heaven. Verse 8, he said, humankind is like a wise fisherman who cast his net in the sea and drew it up from the sea full of little fish. Among them, the wise fisherman discovered a large, fine fish. He threw all the little fish back into the sea and with no difficulty chose the large fish. Whoever has ears to hear should hear. So when we find out about Christ, about God, about the soul, that's the large fish. So all the little fish of this world, all your worries, habits, and all the things we put time and energy into, the fisherman's seen, no, it's the large fish that matters. The large fish is what should be taken care of. And then all the little fish will take care of themselves. And he says, whoever has ears should hear. Whoever is blessed enough to hear this and to understand the goal, if they are of keen intelligence, would realize I should put all of my energy and efforts into obtaining the goal. Or if not, like it said earlier, I now see that I would be living in vanity. In verse 11, he says, the dead are not alive and the living will not die. So we hear these verses. So that means those living unconscious, even in this world right now, are dead. Dead. From our perspective, we think they're living. But if you could see from a higher truth, he says the dead are not alive. And the living, those who have crossed the ocean of suffering and woke up to their true nature, have completed the great work, or created the diamond body, the rainbow body of immortality, will not die. Will leave this body, but will not pass through what's called the second death, which is in the scriptures, in the book of Revelations, in many places in the Bible. The second death is after you leave your physical body, when your astral body dissolves and you get reborn again without remembering what happened before, in a new life, working out more karma. But once this is finally completed, by knowing thyself, oneself, that doesn't happen anymore. The light body carries you through it. Jesus says that in Revelations. You'll not taste the second death. So when you leave this body, rather than continuing on the cycle, you'll be free to move in and out of the planes of existence on your own. In verse 13, Jesus said to the disciples, compare me to something and tell me what I'm like. Simon Peter said, you're like a just messenger. Matthew said, you're like a wise philosopher. But Thomas said, teacher, my mouth is utterly unable to say what you're like, because Thomas could see him in truth. Jesus said, I'm not your teacher, because you've become intoxicated from the bubbling spring I've tended. So he's saying, I'm not even your teacher because you've understood my words in my heart. You've become like me. He took him and withdrew and spoke 3 sayings. When Thomas came back to his friends, they said, what did Jesus say to you? Thomas said, if I tell you one of the sayings he spoke to me, you'll pick up rocks and stone me, and fire will come from the rocks and consume you. So at that time, they often stoned people for heresy, right? For blasphemy. So what Jesus told Thomas was so profound, was such deeper truth than can be conveyed publicly at that time, that Thomas said, even you other disciples would stone me if you heard the words he spoke to me. And Thomas went on to start the church in India, in the Holy Land, the Church of Christ. In verse 14, Jesus said, "What goes into your mouth will not defile you. Rather, it's what comes out of your mouth that will defile you." I would say what goes into our mouth, still important, but he's saying the voice, like in Buddhism, they call it right speech. So the voice is so powerful, the vibration of energy. So we have to be so careful and conscious of what we say and the words we put out there. And that's why he says it's what comes out of your mouth that will defile you. In 15, he says, "When you see one who was not born of women, fall on your face and worship. That is your Father." And then in 17, "I shall give you what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, what no hand has touched, and what has not arisen in the human mind or heart." So he is telling us this beautiful promise beyond what we could even comprehend in this state. And that's why he's saying you have to radically change how you're looking at, talking, thinking about this whole world, this existence that you're in, and follow me. I am offering you something way beyond that, that also encompasses that too, but so that you can be in it in a completely new way. 18, the disciples said, "Tell us what our end will be." Jesus said, "Have you discovered the beginning that you seek the end in that matter? For where the beginning is, for where you started." Back when Jesus said, "You will bear witness because you've been with me from the beginning." Or when he said, "Before Abraham was, I am. I was here before the creation of the heavens and the earth." That I is you. So he says, where the beginning is, the end will be. Blessed is one who stands at the beginning, stands in their purity. That one will know the end and will not taste death. So they always speak of that not tasting death. Jesus always speaks of that. And that's why I want to reiterate it here. It doesn't mean your physical body doesn't die. We all know that, right? He's speaking about what's called immortality throughout the ages. What in Hinduism is called moksha, or what in Buddhism is called nirvana or nibbana, or becoming the Buddha. What in magic, going through Atlantis, Egypt, Iran, Sumeria, is called completing the great work. What they call in Buddhism crossing the ocean of samsara. What is called going out no more, going out on the wheel of birth and death no more. This is what he means, you will not taste death. Even, that's why Neem Karoli Baba said about Jesus on the cross, he never died. He never died. He never died. Because if we become that light body, that pure essence, though the physical body seems to pass away, we, as Atman, as soul, never experience that death. The second half of verse 21, Jesus says, "For this reason I say, if the owner of a house knows a thief's coming, he'll be on guard before the thief arrives, and he'll not let the thief break into the house of his estate and steal his possessions. As for you then, be on guard against the world. Arm yourselves with great strength, or the robbers might find a way to get to you. For the trouble you expect will come. Let there be among you a person who understands." So we have to arm ourselves through God's Spirit, through prayer, meditation, through repetition of the holy names of God, so that the Maya, the illusory energy of this world, first of all, so we can even see that what that means, because most of us are so trapped in illusion that we don't even know it, because we're so trapped in the mind that we think we are the mind and we don't even understand there's a way out. So that's why he first says, "Let there be among you one who understands." You have to have the ears to hear. And if you don't understand, clearly you've came across these words So ask Jesus, help me understand. He said, arm yourself with great strength, or the robber might find a way to get to you. The trouble you expect will come. Like Rumi says, don't expect happiness here. The suffering, the sickness, the death, the loss, the tragedy, it will come, internal and external. Don't think, oh, it won't happen to me. Use every moment, every breath you can remember, and be conscious to build your guard, to purify yourself, to work on your aura, your light body, in every way that you possibly can, through your love and devotion in your heart, through your surrender and your practice. And then he says, when the crop ripened, the person came quickly with sickle in hand and harvested it. Whoever has ears to hear should hear. So when your spirit ripens, you should come quickly with sickle in hand to harvest that crop. Harvest the crop of divinity within you. Wake up to it now that you have the chance. He said to the disciples, these nursing babies are like those who enter the kingdom. Because he saw babies nursing. They said, shall we enter the kingdom as babies? And Jesus said to them, when you make the two, the duality, into one, into unity, when you make the inner like the outer, and the outer like the inner, like Trevor Hall says, the vision of no division, and the upper like the lower, and when you make the male and female into a single one, so that the male will not be male, nor the female female. When you make eyes in the place of an eye, a hand in place of a hand, a foot in place of a foot, an image in place of an image, then you'll enter the kingdom. So what does all of that mean? It means when we can make our mind not discriminate and be stuck in duality, in division, and we can turn all back into one. So sit where you're sitting right now, and whatever you're seeing, hearing, feeling, ask yourself, if I had no labels for any of this, if I hadn't been taught thought, it would all just be one thing, wouldn't it? It would all just be one happening. Jesus says later in here, who am I to divide? Who's made me a man of division? And then where he says, the eyes in place of an eye, a hand in place of a hand, a foot in place of a foot, an image in place of an image. My friend explained this to me. She said, because we see hands and eyes and feet and all these images, but that's just the shadow of our true nature. So when we can see what's really there behind the appearance, when we can see the love, the consciousness vibrating behind the appearance, that's how we enter the kingdom. And Jesus says here in verse 23, I'll choose you 1 from 1,000 and 2 from 10,000, and they will stand as a single one. So again, oneness, single one. But why does he say 1 from 1,000, 2 from 10,000? Because that's how rare it is. Not how rare it is for someone to go to a church or to say they believe in God, but how rare it is for a being that is truly ready to take that step, that jump into God. And that's why he says, I'll put mother against child and parents against kids and all of those kind of sayings, because it is rare in this world of the body, of the prison, to find one who's ready to do that work, to find one that is willing, without holding on to anything, to dive in to find their true nature. And so he says 1 from 1,000 and 2 from 10,000. Verse 25 and 26. Jesus said, love your brother like your soul. protect him like the apple of your eye. He said, you see the speck that's in your brother's eye, but you don't see the beam that's in your own eye. When you take the beam out of your own eye, then you'll see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. So we should love all beings as our very own self, as our own sibling, as our dearest friend, if we wish to get to God. All beings are us, but you could also say it as our brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers. And he's saying we want to judge others, but we have this log in our eye, this beam in our eye. So look at ourselves first, clear our own defects. We can only transmit what we have in the vibration that we're at. So do the work on yourself. Then you can see clearly to help others. Otherwise, it's the blind leading the blind, and we're just leading each other into further suffering. Verse 27, Jesus says, if you do not fast from the world, you will not find the kingdom. If you do not observe the Sabbath as a Sabbath, you'll not see the Father. This verse is incredibly powerful. He says we have to fast from this world. We cannot remain caught in its dramas and its games if we want to see the kingdom, the Father, within and without. We have to have the courage to go against the grain of nature, to sit down and do our spiritual practice rather than going bowling or watching TV or hanging out with our friends. Because we always say tomorrow, and then life's over and you die and you go take another birth having not found God and continuing suffering. So when it's time to wake up, there is things that have to be given up, given away, changed. Relationships have to be changed. I used an example in a post I made today. For me, when I wake up at 5 in the morning, then get out of bed at 5:30 to read before getting in the shower and pray and breathe and meditate before I go into the meditation room to do my more formal practices of reading and chanting, mantra, meditation, ritual work. There's sometimes the thought, oh, I'm up so early and it's so beautiful. I could go on the porch and smoke a cigar, make some tea, bring my dogs out there, eat food while I read a book. That would be great. Nobody would ever condemn me for that. They would say, you wake up so early, that sounds so peaceful, that's enjoyable, that's great, that's healthy. But I could spend a whole lifetime doing that, and that won't take me deep enough to find God. So we have to fast from the world, even from some of our habits and things. We have to be very particular about where and what we put our time and energy into. Very conscious of that. And with this, I'm going to end this section of the commentary on the Gospel of Thomas. And in the next video, we'll continue with verse 28. May Christ be with you. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.